Today, we are going to commemorate Martin Luther King Jr., Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and we have a selection of videos, of poems, and we have some of his speeches as well. So stick around.
The Negro Mother by Langston Hughes. Children, I come back today to tell you a story of the long, dark way that I had to climb, that I had to know in order that the race might live and grow. Look at my face, dark as the night, yet shining like the sun with love's true light. I am the dark girl who crossed the Red Sea, carrying in my body the seed of the free. I am the woman who worked in the field, bringing the cotton and the corn to yield. I am the one who labored as a slave, beaten and mistreated for the work that I gave. Children sold away from me. My husband sold too. No safety, no love, no respect was I due 300 years ago in the deepest South. But God put a song and a prayer in my mouth. God put a dream like steel in my soul. Now through my children, I'm reaching the goal. Now through my children, young and free, I realize the blessing denied to me. I couldn't read then. I couldn't write. I had nothing back there in the night. Sometimes the valley was filled with tears, but I kept trudging on through the lonely years. Sometimes the road was hot with sun, but I had to keep on till my work was done. I had to keep on, no stopping for me. I was the seed of the coming free. I nourished a dream then that nothing could smother, deep in my breast, the Negro mother. I had only hope then, but now through you, dark ones of today, my dreams must come true. All you dark children in the world out there, remember my sweat, my pain, my despair. Remember my years heavy with sorrow, and make of those years a torch for tomorrow. Make of my past a road to the light, out of the darkness, the ignorance, the night. Lift high my banner out of the dust. Stand like free men supporting my trust. Believe in the right. Let none push you back. Remember the whip and the slaver's track. Remember how the strong in struggle and strife still bar you the way and deny you life. But march ever forward, breaking down bars. Look ever upward at God's sun and stars. Oh, my dark children, may my dreams and my prayers impel you forever up the great stairs. For I will be with you till no white brother dares to keep down the children of the Negro mother. This is a poem that I learned from my oldest sister, Martha, who had to be sent to New York to try to get a high school education, because in my county in Southwest Virginia, Amelia, there were no schools for blacks at the time. And she was able to finally get her high school certificate when she was 23 years old, because she had to come out of day school and go to night school because of the finances. And she was able to go to the sessions they had there, seminars and whatnot on Black history. And when she'd come back down to visit us in the summer, she always brought something, some bit of history or something she wanted us to know. And poetry was something that my mother and father loved. And they would want to know what you've been doing. So this was one that she brought back to us, and most of us really liked it. So she was an actual dramatic reader. I'm not like she was, but her memory was better than mine. So I never actually learned it without looking at the paper, but I'm very familiar with it. And there are many sentences in there about prayer. And I just want to tell you what I've been through in the last year and how the prayers of the people and of myself, I'm sure, I don't remember anything about it, helped me to get back to the point where I am now. I had a massive stroke in June, but I don't remember a thing about. My children have told me since I've come back to myself. But God is powerful, and the thing that the Negro mother is telling the children, our children, of today, of that day, when this poem was written, and now, still, that prayer is what we have to depend on God. He's the one who has brought us out. And I am just an example of that. People who see me now and who saw me when I was sick call me God's miracle. And I just want to be able to say that to anybody who's down, but especially do I talk to my children and to the children and youth of today, that we cannot forsake God, that He is the one who will bring us out.
I lived in Detroit, Michigan, in the city on the west side of Detroit. My mother took me to see Dr. King in Detroit as well as here in Washington, D.C. August 28, 1963 was my 12th birthday.
The buzz on the March on Washington started buzzing about a month beforehand, and as a beginning freelance, I did a lot of work for USIA, and this job came along. The caveat was that I would get paid twice my day rate, but they would own the negatives for the National Archives. I said, okay, that's fine. Not knowing at the time that this was going to be one of the great historical moments of U.S. history.
Part of our job as the archives is to accession, preserve, and make available records created by federal agencies. One of the roles of the USIA was kind of document what America was all about, to project a view of the United States overseas to foreign countries during the Cold War.
And I was 26 or 27 years old and very spry and very athletic, and I climbed over everything and went everywhere, and I photographed close-ups, long shots. I worked pretty hard that day.
Okay, and what I'm going to do now is take the folder out with the photos in it. These are the photos of the March on Washington.
Okay.
And this is a copy of your folder, the photo here.
I learned about the photo about 2.5 years ago. My cousin was browsing a catalog, and it had calendars in it, one of which was a Black History calendar. She saw my picture on the back, and she called and said, your picture's on a calendar, and you're holding a banner or a pennant or something. So I was just in shock, and I still am.
She was on one of the front row of the crowd on sort of the left side of where Martin Luther King made that speech, and I see some people laughing and some people crying and some people earnest, and she was one of the ones. Not only was she beautiful, but she was so involved.
This is the banner that I held August 28, 1963, that I proudly held up as Dr. King and others were speaking. I tell my grandchildren that marching with Dr. King was a very significant part of my life. As they learn about him in school they can share with their classmates that their grandmother was part of something that was very important.
Her picture was used and has been used since then as the face of the March on Washington. She deserves it.
I know what the caged bird feels, alas, when the sun is bright on the upland slopes, when the wind stirs soft through the springing grass, and the river flows like a stream of glass, when the first bird sings and the first bud opes, and the faint perfume from its chalice steals. I know what the caged bird feels. I know why the caged bird beats his wing till its blood is red on the cruel bars, for he must fly back to his perch and cling when he fain would be on the bough a-swing. And a pain still throbs in the old, old scars, and they pulse again with a keener sting. I know why he beats his wing. I know why the caged bird sings, ah, me, when his wing is bruised and his bosom sore, when he beats his bars and he would be free. It is not a carol of joy or glee, but a prayer that he sends from his heart's deep core, but a plea that upward to heaven he flings. I know why the caged bird sings.
Happy King Day. Now, I just want people to know I did not do all this. I didn't want you to think I was taking credit. I'm just getting my butterfly right. With instructions from my outstanding colleagues here.
I dream a world where man no other man will scorn, where love will bless the earth, and peace its path adorn. I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom's way, where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day. A world I dream where black or white, whatever race you be, will share the bounties of the earth and every man is free. Where wretchedness will hang his head and joy, like a pearl, attends the needs of all mankind. Of such I dream my world.
From whose sanctuary King himself would sermonize from time to time. And one of those times was Thursday, December 6th, 1956. And Pastor, you said you were a little older than me, so were you around at that point? You were 3 years old. Okay. I wasn't born yet. On Thursday, December 6th, 1956. And before Dr. King had pointed us to the mountaintop, before he told us about his dream in front of the Lincoln Memorial, King came here as a 27-year-old preacher to speak on what he called the challenge of a new age. The challenge of a new age. It was a period of triumph, but also uncertainty for Dr. King and his followers. Because just weeks earlier, the Supreme Court had ordered the desegregation of Montgomery's buses, a hard-wrought, hard-fought victory that would put an end to the 381-day historic boycott down in Montgomery, Alabama. And yet, as Dr. King rose to take that pulpit, the future still seemed daunting. It wasn't clear what would come next for the movement that Dr. King led. It wasn't clear how we were going to reach the promised land, because segregation was still rife. Lynchings still a fact. Yes, the Supreme Court had ruled not only on the Montgomery buses, but also on Brown versus Board of Education, and yet that ruling was defied throughout the South. by schools, and by states. They ignored it with impunity. And here in the nation's capital, the federal government had yet to fully align itself with the laws on its books and the ideals of its founding. So it's not hard for us then to imagine that moment. We can imagine folks coming to this church, happy about the boycott being over. We can also imagine them, though, coming here concerned about their future. Sometimes second-guessing strategy, maybe fighting off some creeping doubts, perhaps despairing about whether the movement in which they had placed so many of their hopes, a movement in which they believed so deeply, could actually deliver on its promise.
Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. Exalted. And every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day with all of God's children. Be able to sing with new meaning, my country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty.
Well, it's hard to listen to that without thinking about all those who came before and everything that they sacrificed in order to bring civil rights and to advance the movements of equality in this country.